Hello, I'm Jerry Simchuk. I'm here at Sugar Pine going to do a demonstration on building kestrel feet. All right, first step in creating your legs for your bird is getting your study cast or your pewter legs as reference. I don't use these legs because with the finished bird on metal feet, over time this can tend to sag or droop. So I like to create my legs using a brass core rod and then building up the flesh with this epoxy sculpt. So first thing I do is I take my brass rod and I come in using my pattern. I take and mark those joints. And when I do the bottom joint, I also want to mark that gap because it'll be factored into my habitat. So at the point we marked our joint, we want to make that bend. Just a little bend is all we need. And you can make it match your pattern. All right, now we've got the second leg in and our bird's standing. Now we can take a look to make sure the posture is the way we want him. Take a look, make sure his eyes are level with the horizon and his body posture is nice and vertical and square, and we have a good stance. So now we have our toes ready for bending and shaping. All right, I'm going to lay down my toe and mark the joints, bend in our talon, start out at the tip, and gradually work our way up that talon until we get to the base of that talon. And I like to give it a little up bend so it arcs up and then back down. Now you have either your pattern to compare to, or you got your study cast to compare to. So now we have all of our toes with the talon bend in there. Okay. Notice how I'm flattening the end first and gradually working up towards the base. All right, now we're ready to grind some metal. Get on our safety glasses. Now I'm going to start with this nice big carbide cutting bit. And the main thing is to get rid of all of this excess metal right here. The next step, we're going to bend our toes around the knuckle joints. Okay, what we want to do is bend our toes so that the toe is clamped around our habitat. You know, we want to make sure it's grabbing on. Start at the talon area. If I want that talon to grab, I can give it a little bend there, and then at the next joint a little bend. And I keep making little bends at those joints all along. I don't want it all primarily at one joint. So then I can set that up against my habitat and determine how much more I've got to bend it. So let's go ahead and just block on the epoxy onto our leg. And the way I want to do it is in reference to the actual leg, where I still want to get it basic shape and size and thickness, so I don't have to do a lot of work. But you want to make sure you get all the wrinkles and creases out of this. Now let's go ahead and do a toe while we're at it. Of course, you'll do all your toes. And the same thing here. You want to make sure that you put enough on the toe to represent the thickness of the pads. So you see, we're going to take and measure the maximum thickness to include the pad. So I want to make sure the amount of epoxy I put on the toe here will be at least that amount of thickness. It's going to be thicker this way than it will be this way. I take a nice carbide cutter and I'll cut a flat edge all along the inside and the outside of that leg. So let's get started on that. And you can see this stuff carves really nice once it's set up, which is one reason I don't worry about getting the proper form right off the bat, because I'd rather carve it and I can be a lot more accurate this way, having it in my hands rather than trying to work something that's still flexible. And just like I did with the leg, I want to start first by narrowing it down. Now it's going to be wider where that toe ties into the leg. So I want to make sure that the upper portion of that toe is narrowed down. So we'll first shave off the top, get that squared up. Then we can come in there and carve out the pads. Get in there with that point and really get in there and dig in and get around that pad. See, and even at this stage I can start to pull that pad definition front to back rather than just staying with my square. Now that you've got those reference lines drawn on there, now we can actually start shaping them. And go to a carbide cutter for the initial shaping. Now I just start gradually rounding from the top down to the side. Go to that center line or reference line, round to it, and up and over. Do that on both sides, right along above that line, narrowing it up a little bit. You don't have to do a lot to have a large impact. Just remember, it's not a perfect round, perfect oval, still regular. So when you're shaping that, make sure you keep that in mind. Okay, so just keep working that till you get all the pads on the toe, all the way up front. And just start cutting in your texture on that leg. Following your reference lines. Carefully go in there and take your time and get them all cut in. And you'll just keep going until you get it all cut. So start with the bigger scales first. Get those all worked in there. So I go ahead and I cut that in. I start going across the top because that gets my reference in place. Okay. And then I can come down and go along the side, continuing to define that scale. Now, when you're texturing the pads, you want to go in a circular pattern. Keep making circles moving forwards or back along that initial edge. This is the edge that's more critical to see this pattern. And now that we've got all of our toes and legs completed, we're ready to attach them. So we're going to attach the toe to the leg, and each toe we're going to take and set up to make sure everything's in good order. The tip of the talons touching the habitat, and our pads are touching the habitat as well. We take and knead this epoxy together. And this will be our holder and permanent attachment method. So we can take some of that and stick around that base a little bit. Then you can take that toe, each toe, and just drive it up in there. So you can have that set in there and blend up into that leg to represent the wrist area. And scaling's right through here on the top of that foot. Goes right down to the center toe. And outside of the center, it's that circle pattern texture. And it's now ready for the bird to attach and set in there. Okay?